The combat in 2022's Harvestella is a little clunky, and the characters in side quests look no different from normal NPCs. Persona 4 handles themes of queerness unevenly, to say the least. The Alan Heinberg Jin Chung run of Young Avengers gives a drug abuse allegory to the one black team member. And Charmed? Where do I even start? And yet, none of that makes me love them any less. They're actually some of my favorite pieces of media. But mention any of those issues in the wrong place or to the wrong person, and baby, you've got a big storm coming. It makes me wonder, why are we so allergic to criticism? Before I continue, if you like what I have to say, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Sharing and commenting helps too. Anything to please the algorithm. Thanks in advance, I really appreciate all the help I can get. Now, let's get back to it. When I was younger, I used to be a lot more active in fandom. I'd be part of big back and forths about Young Avengers, post on Final Fantasy and Silent Hill forums, hang around Reddit communities, things like that. I still engage with fandom, but over the years, I've pulled back a lot, becoming a bit more of a lurker for better or worse. As time went on, though, I started to notice a pattern in many fan spaces. People really don't like it when you critique something they like. Well, duh. I'm not talking about going into a discussion just to insult a game or a movie or what have you. That's just rude. But I see it too with well-reasoned critiques. Not just of something's flaws, but overall analysis too. I mean, I've lost track of how many times I've seen or heard, "You're reading too much into it, let people like things, you're just being a film snob." Things like that. Okay, let me back up a little bit. I can only really approach this from a US perspective, but think back to high school English class. I think it was my sophomore year when we read The Great Gatsby, and my teacher was talking about how the green light that Gatsby looks at was a symbol of the American dream. A lot of us were frustrated and thought, well, maybe a green light is just a green light, which I do think is a natural response to a degree. Talking about that green light, though, or to use a more modern example, talking about the parallels between Star Wars' First Order and the actual Nazis during World War II, is a type of critique. That is, it's media criticism. When you hear the word criticism, though, or the word critique, you probably think of something negative, right? Like constructive criticism, when you look at the flaws of a piece and respond to those flaws with ideas for making it better. Or you might just think of the first dictionary definition, which is an expression of disapproval. Somebody said something dumb and was loudly criticized for it. The problem with that is, well, words have different meanings. Take the term critical thinking. It's not the same as disapproval. It refers to taking what you know and what you've learned and combining it to form a well-reasoned conclusion. It's kind of like literary or media criticism. You analyze things from various perspectives. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's just neutral. Looking at, say, how Kratos evolves in God of War is media criticism. So is examining what makes Super Mario games fun, or outlining why Morbius bombed as badly as it did. It's Morbin time! Not really. Never Morbin time. Anyway. Part of me wants to make up a new, pithy term for media criticism. Something that could make people more comfortable with analysis and critique, whether it's positive or negative or neutral. But doing that would just muddy things further. If part of the problem is that people don't know or care that criticism isn't inherently bad, shouldn't we help teach about it or push back instead of making it a branding problem? Especially when branding isn't actually the issue here. You don't have to use the words analysis, criticism, or critique to see it. If something you say is perceived as negative, there's always going to be a contingent ready to mobilize on behalf of that work, no matter how big of a fan you actually are of it. If I had to guess, I'd say that part of why some people hate the idea of criticism, not just the term itself, is that it throws them back to that high school English class. It makes people think of academia, and more importantly than just not wanting to write an essay, there's the idea that academics think that anyone that isn't an academic is below them. Academia definitely can have an issue with elitism, but I really don't think that a college education is the only way to take a critical look at media. You don't need to understand what mise-en-scène or feminist theory or diegetic sound are to look at the composition of a shot, the treatment of women, or the use of sound within a movie's universe. School can give you more of a background, it can help you learn more and teach you how to really delve into criticism. I know I learned a lot, but it's not the only way to go about it. Learning some of the terms can make conversations clearer, and I do think that's important, but there are so many ways to go about that. Like, by consuming media and engaging with it, you're naturally going to learn pieces of it over time, so it's not like you need to go to film school to have opinions on a movie or ship a AAA game to see that Star Wars The Last Jedi borrows from the classic movie Rashomon, or think that Overwatch's party comp changes were a bad idea. You might lack the context for what you learn, even make references you don't realize actually are references, but you can still get an understanding of, say, what video games look like by playing a lot of them. It's harder to learn how things are made by consuming media, though. Maybe that's actually where some of the pushback to criticism comes from. Reading every book at your public library doesn't give you an idea of what it's like to actually write a novel. Playing every video game released since 2006 doesn't teach you how to develop a game. Being an uber fan of a franchise doesn't mean you know how the creative process works. Like, there's a measure of subjectivity here, but if I had a nickel for every take about how easy it is to make an entirely new game mode, or that an abandoned plot thread means that the creator's vision was somehow compromised, money would be coming out my nostrils. It's a hard needle to thread. You don't need to be part of an industry to engage in critique, but at the same time, not all criticism is valid. Yet, even having said that, sometimes critiques that are off base can have valid pieces to them. But what really gets my goat is the hostility that comes in response to criticism sometimes, whether it's positive or negative or neutral. Like I said earlier, you're reading too much into it, can't we just enjoy things? And attitudes like that tend to shut down analytical discussion. I think it's a natural response to a degree. We all need to be able to shut off our brains and enjoy things uncritically sometimes. Being analytical Eddie doesn't exactly make you fun at parties, you know? Unless it's like a literature department party or something, but that's a pretty unique case. It's easier to point out when it's in response to talking about a work's shortcomings. And I think, if I'm honest, that's what frustrates me more. If someone thinks you're just looking for meaning isn't there, you can often still chat about other parts of a show or a movie or a game just on a surface level. But point out a flaw and suddenly you're a fake fan, you're an interloper, you're hellbent on destroying someone's beloved hobby. I'm far from the only one to talk about this. In her video, No, Twilight Hate Isn't Just Misogyny, Princess Weeks touches on it, for example.
I think it's so important to back away from this instinct of treating people who are pushing back against your passive wish fulfillment as trying to do intentional harm. Because I don't think a lot of people really truly sit and understand the ways in which other people are not allowed entry into said wish fulfillment, and how comfortable some people have gotten being the face of this and having everyone being behind them.
Here she's talking specifically about how she loves Dune and still recognizes that it has elements worth critiquing. A little later, she continues.
It's just about being aware of what we're consuming and not treating awareness as a threat to enjoyment. There are plenty of ways to blend both. And I think that if you really want to be in community with other people, you have to learn how to do that. Otherwise, you might as well just be reading by yourself.
There's way more to the video than just that, to be clear. At one point, Princess talks about the pacing of the Twilight books and how there's not really a lot of plot in them, how things don't happen much until toward the end of each novel. She covers a lot about criticism and what it means to engage with media in the video, so I really recommend checking it out. She approaches it with a lot of nuance, and it's an excellent watch. Princess is completely right, too. Talking about something's flaws doesn't mean you hate that thing. Personally, I firmly believe it can be an expression of fandom. You enjoyed something but saw things it could have done better. You may even want something you love to be better. As an example, when people say that Zero Suit Samus having high heels doesn't make sense, it doesn't mean they hate Samus or Metroid. Hell, it doesn't even mean that they hate Zero Suit Samus in general. Sure, it could, but it could just as easily mean they love Samus and want her design to make more sense for the things she does in-game. When you see something negative about a thing you like, it makes sense you disagree. I totally understand that impulse. And with the amount of exaggeration there is, especially on social media, I can imagine that it makes that impulse stronger for a lot of people. I mean, we live in a world where people got up in arms about puddles being changed in Insomniac's Spider-Man. Minor frame rate drops or texture issues render games unplayable. A messy script makes a movie absolute garbage. Something being a cohesive, even excellent work turns into an untouchable work of art. Sometimes people turn fandom into their whole personality. Not the idea you're into video games or movies in general, but specific works themselves, or the fact that you consume media at all. Whether it's exaggeration or identity, with attitudes like that, it's no wonder even a well-reasoned critique would feel like an attack. That just makes it harder to discuss media, especially online. When the lines between media criticism and tearing something down blur, how can we tell the difference? Fans of a thing can be vicious towards the thing they're supposedly fans of. Sometimes it's as minor as sending a rude tweet because Diablo 4's inventory system still feels like it's out of 2001. Sometimes it's as drastic as sending the devs death threats. Hell, I once had someone with a Final Fantasy XV Noctis avatar find me on Facebook to tell me to unalive myself, and the only reason I could think of was that I wrote an article for the Mary Sue about how Final Fantasy XV treats women, and I had a blast with that game. If I can go out on a limb here, I think the idea of criticism as hatred of a work plays into some of the reactionary bullshit we see in response to pop culture. When asking, does this game combat move any faster? Gets you dogpiled, which is a true story from when I was like 18 and on the GameFAQs forum for Final Fantasy XII. Is it a stretch to imagine that anything even remotely resembling a diversity discussion earns a ton of hatred? And I'm saying this as a pretty light-skinned brown guy. It's made harder when you're more obviously different from the norm. At least I was able to hop into Halo matches as a teen without being bombarded by racial slurs, or, well, at least targeted ones. The resistance to any form of criticism, especially with the overzealous hostile group mentality that can form around media and pop culture, creates the perfect circumstances for hatred. Sometimes that's racist debacle in fanfiction communities, like LiveJournal's Race Fail in 2009. But fandom is more than just female-dominated online spaces. It's Comic-Cons, web forums, Discord servers, comic book shops. The list goes on, so naturally it can get way worse than ignoring people of color. It becomes Gamergate. It becomes Comicsgate. It becomes the Sad Puppy Hugo Awards debacle. Or, as we're seeing now, it becomes swarms of targeted harassment at best, if you dare agree that games consultants like Sweet Baby Inc. are there to make the games we love better. I think there are a lot of people who can't see the difference between criticism from fandom and criticism from hatred, but worse, there are a lot of people who don't want to. Instead, they want to take people who can't see the difference and galvanize them. Hatred is a powerful motivator, and plenty of people hate gay people, hate women, trans people, Asian and Black and Latina people. They don't care that discussions about racism and power structures are decades old, or that we know for a fact that diversity in creators can make works better. They're convinced that their targets are themselves targeting media that they love. It can't be about something we love. It has to be either about hate, or it has to be about keeping toys away from these supposed fake fans that are only coming into media now. Honestly, I think that kind of bullshit shows more of a disdain for books and games and movies than any analysis ever could. I mean, when it comes to games alone, the first person to win a video game tournament in the United States is a trans woman, Rebecca Heineman. The precursor to video game cartridges was invented by a black man, Gerald Lawson. The creator of Fallout, Tim Kaine, is a gay man, for fuck's sake. We've always been here. It's nothing new, and that just makes the hatred all the more ridiculous. When you mix that defensive mindset with reactionary politics, it stops being exaggeration about something's flaws. It stops being about avoiding bad fan bases or muting your mic in an online game. It becomes actively dangerous. The people who get the brunt of it are usually marginalized in some form, but nobody's safe, and that terrifies me. How does a hobby, even a passion, something made to be intriguing and enjoyable, go so rancid? I know I get frustrated when people dismiss the impact that a book or a TV show can have, or when video games are framed as solely children's playthings to grow out of. There's so much more to it than that. But at the same time, we have to remember that none of this is essential to life. Media can legitimately save lives. It can enrich them. It can give us strength. But if games or movies suddenly ceased to exist, we would find ways to go on. Stories will always exist, and we'll always share them, always need them to help humanity live and grow. But they're not food. They're not water, not shelter. The culture surrounding them shouldn't be this charged. I get that I might sound like a hypocrite, being someone who writes games and is sitting here talking into a microphone and posting to YouTube, but we need to keep the big picture in mind, you know? The people on the other side of your screen are just that. People. I know it's easy to forget with words on a screen. Hell, it's easy to lose sight of when someone's literally on camera talking to you week after week even. But they're still people. Some need that reminder way more than others, but I think we could all stand to remember that. There'll always be jerks who just want to hurt people, but so many others just forget we're all human. When it comes to criticism, legitimate, well-thought-out critique, we're not boogeymen coming to take your games or movies from you. People might joke about it in response to bad faith reactionary bullshit, but the reality is it's about making media better. More diversity reflects what our world actually looks like and can bring in so many new ideas. More accessibility lets more people experience the worlds and stories that developers and other creators have to show and tell. Better game design makes for more enjoyable experiences and can even enhance storytelling. Stronger character arcs and better narrative cohesion creates a more powerful, more memorable story. Don't you want our games and movies and shows to be better? I understand that change can be uncomfortable. When it comes to diversity, studies have shown that during discussions moderated to be 50% men and 50% women, many male participants feel as if women are taking up more time and space. If you're accustomed to seeing one thing as the default, I can see how any shift in that may feel like you're being silenced. When it comes to game design, when you're used to the way that things are, when you're able to slip comfortably into gaming without needing to relearn anything other than control schemes, of course, a change in that would feel wrong. There's a reason that if it ain't broke, don't fix it is a saying we have, after all. If you're used to sticking to looking at the plot you're shown in a work, and are faced with a discussion of its actual structure, let alone symbolism or something, it makes sense it would feel foreign. It's a different type of thinking. But change isn't bad. Yeah, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It's the one constant thing in life. Everything changes. Critique helps bring about change, so it's no wonder it earns such strong reactions. Without it, though, our media would become stale, and if there's one thing I've learned about fandom, it's that it always wants more, to the point of creating it themselves. That's the beauty of it. Fandom can be a really welcoming place. It can foster community, bring people together even to the point of finding love, give laughter when life gets tough. Fandom has some of the best parts of humanity. Sometimes it's raising money for charity, like Games Done Quick or Fandom Forward or One in an Army. Sometimes it's banding together for mutual aid or mobilizing for political causes or raising awareness about missing people. At the same time, fandom, just like society as a whole, can really favor the status quo. Sometimes that's in response to a lack of minority representation. Other times it's because of game design concerns. Either way, that resistance to even the smallest perceived challenge doesn't do anything for our media. How can we make our work better if we decide that criticism is only from outsiders bent on destroying what we know? And I don't just mean backlash to DEI, but to the idea that you're a fake fan if you analyze, if you criticize, if you try to engage beyond just positivity. Don't think. Shut your brain off. Just consume. Buy more games. See more movies. Be a real fan. Shut up and consume. I'm only one person. I know that no matter what games I create, books I write, videos I make, chances are I won't be able to change that many minds in the grand scheme of things. Maybe people close to me, maybe a few others, but more than changing minds, I think what I can do, what creators can do, is help people feel more seen. We all need connection. Criticism can be part of that. We discuss media because we love it. We want to see the work continue to get better. Talking about it and doing the work to create better games and movies and TV helps connect us. Maybe, just maybe, those connections can lead to a better world. Thanks for watching. If you like what I have to say, or I at least made you think, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Commenting helps too. Is there something that bugs you about your favorite game, movie, or show? Or what about something you appreciate in a piece of media you don't actually like? Until next time, take care.